I'm just, I would just say so just so I understand, what is your next step in giving Vavra teeth?
I really don't know. A poorly written law. Yeah.
Because you'd have to
uh,
get it amended first. And then once it was amended, then you'd have to write a new law, which is a whole nother,
Yeah.
I don't know if you could getting it amended. I don't know that I just
Yeah.
wonder what the next, I don't
I
claim
mean,
to I don't write policy, so I don't really
yeah.
understand how that works. But I just wonder what your next step would be. And are there any other laws? Because a lot of times I'm sure you've read USC's and you know that there's a lot of things that cover, is there anything that can cover Vavra, like that maybe supports Vavra?
That question is easier. ADA is easier. So as quickly as I can, I had to essentially file two complaints at Duke because there's some question as to whether or not. So I was on the cover of Christianity Today magazine in June 2015, and the cover with my dumbass face on there said, called me war torn. And that was right before I was putting in my most recent PhD applications. And I'm in every seminary in the US as poster boy for PTSD. And
Did you want
so,
that, or did they do that
no,
with your?
nope. And they didn't get a signed release for my photo either. But when I go to
Oh,
attorneys,
wow.
like I can't find an attorney because, and this is right back to your question, to separate my disability, say PTSD, from my service, like that's an impossible question. Like I don't know what it would look like to that somebody is discriminating against me because I'm disabled or only because I'm a veteran or like I don't. It's like sex and color. Like did someone hate on you because you've got female genitalia or because your skin is not light enough? Like I don't know. It's in their head. Um, so I think, and that's why you'll notice like hate crimes is much more actionable because the law is written in a different way. We have protections, they haven't been enforced. But with VEVRA, we don't have protections. So at least like in my mind, I had been going for, look, have a full committee hearing on this. Because if Congress doesn't know, they've been being given information that I can't verify. Um, but at least if there's public awareness of it, that seems to grease the gears a little bit. Because I don't like, yeah, I think you have to rewrite the law because
Yeah.
it's just so poorly worded and it's already been tested in the courts. So until the law changes, any other court is going to have to follow the Eighth Circuit's precedent.
Yeah. And
Um,
the burden of proof is really high.
yeah,
That's one of the issues that we run into. The burden of proof is so high that it makes it hard to enforce.
yeah,
That's one of the issues you run into.
yeah.
And I didn't mention that I was actually I don't know if you ever heard of DOME, the school for EO down in Florida, the Army School for
Oh,
Equal Opportunity. I actually went to that school when I was on active duty. So I was in
interesting.
EO. I was an EO representative at the brigade level.
Huh,
I did it for a little while. Then I went in and said, "Hey, I don't want to do this job no more because one, I'm not. It's going to stop me from getting promoted because it's going to
yeah,
give me a bad name, and two, I didn't think it was really doing what it said it was supposed to do.
huh,
So I asked to be sent back down to the line.
yeah,
So I know very well how the EO system in the military works and how it can, um, yeah, I know how the system works. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, there's a reason it doesn't receive 50% popularity anymore. It was a little I always thought of affirmative action as a finite solution for an infinite problem because it doesn't address the roots of it. It just it's trying to create a way to expand diversity. And one of the things in employment, I thought, well, instead of like a stick, what if you had a carrot? What if you could reward employers of any size if they meet, say 6% threshold? If you meet 6% threshold, you get some kind of tax break, right? What if you use a carrot instead of a stick? And that way, companies are going to have to learn I want DD-214s. Who's got them? Give them to me. And then it puts the power
Yeah.
in the veteran's hand to be like, oh, you better treat me right because I don't have to give you my DD-214.
Hmm.
And I think that might be more effective. Yeah, it's it's a tougher nut to crack. Um, and that's why I think hate crimes is more actionable. It's
Yeah.
visceral, it's high contrast, and it's enforceable. It just hasn't been enforced. But this one's it's harder.
When it comes to, I can tell you, when it comes to gender and race, they are definitely something that is still enforced, and
Yeah,
it's something
yeah,
that organizations um, are still taking, agencies are still taking DE and I, gender. They're taking it very serious, especially here in the Pacific Northwest. It is
mm,
something that is taken very serious. The military aspect, I mean, I don't know if it's taken
yeah.
as serious.
Some of the student vets at OSU have said pretty frankly to me, like, no, it's a joke, and it's not a toxic environment, but it's also like they know there's yeah they know. Um, I part of me also wondered if there's some like affirmative action is facing an uphill battle, but if the arguments or the arguers against affirmative action also like if there's a way to draw service and service members and their rights and human dignity into that discussion, I wonder if it would make it more difficult to undermine DEI and affirmative action because I believe in the systems, but I also think that, like I said, it's like it's a weird inverse way that it might just be simpler to use incentives rather than enforcements.
Yeah.
And if there's some way for service members advocacy to help support keeping affirmative action in DEI, like I'm all for it. But a lot of the places that don't want to treat us like human beings are the progressive spaces because they want to believe or they have some idea in their mind that we're either damaged goods or we can't be trusted with weapons or something. I don't know. And so it's just a very unique situation that's going to take a lot more thinking and working than say like hate crimes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. I agree.
Tim and Nick, you got anything or thoughts, questions, concerns?
Well, it's just it's one of these things. It's hard to quantify because it's a pervasive and it's a very low undercurrent. Um, I do suicide prevention. That's my thing, and I talk about my PTSD, my time in the military. I served from '84 to '87. I did not see combat, but I was also involved in the largest single day loss of military life in the history of the United States military on December 12th, 1985, in Ganders, Newfoundland. Um, People do they? Ooh, you're a veteran. Uh-oh, is are you stable? You're just very low, pervasive. It's not. You're not going to find someone with a big sign. I hate veterans. That doesn't happen. But yeah, you just you get like Logan said. We get used to. Oh, I didn't get that. I didn't get that promotion. I didn't get that job. I didn't get. And you find out down the road here and there, well, that was, they weren't going to do it anyway. I was fortunate. I My last position was with the state of California, Governor's Office of Emergency Services. My section, the California State Warning Center, our manager was a retired command sergeant major. He looked for veterans because he knew we had this level of training and duty, sense of duty and stuff, and he can teach the job. You can't teach those kind of skills that we get in the military. I was very fortunate. A lot of other places, not so much. And how do you prove it? You know, it's tough. I mean, it is really tough. And the laws, as we've been pointed out, they're there, but they're hard to enforce, and it some of it is very ambiguous as to what it means. So what do you do? It's tough, but it's a conversation that needs to be had because this, again, from my perspective in working with veteran and first responder suicide, as these are the things when the reasons veterans commit suicide are, it's not related to their combat experience. It's things like finances. It's the constant move. It's there's all these things in there that come up that are the same. They're just amplified because of us being having served in the military. It gets more amplified. But the statistics that we have from the VA are showing things, family issues, financial issues. Well, these are all the root of this. If you can't get a job, you can't get into school, you can't get whatever it is you're trying to do. What do you do? Where do you wind up at? So
Yeah.
Can can I just go over real quick? I'm sorry, I mean to cut you off, Isaac. I know we're short on time, but you let me know if as a EO representative, my job was to go in and not necessarily um, enforce the affirmative action. It didn't work the way there was a very bad PR on how affirmative action works. And I think that getting the understanding that you're not trying to make someone hire somebody, you're just going through and checking to make sure the hiring process is working correctly. There's a big difference. And what people understand is, oh, you're going to tell me I have to hire this person. And getting them to understand, no, we're not telling you to hire anybody. We just want to know how it's possible that out of this entire population, you didn't pick one. And we just want you to explain that. The way the EO system worked in the Army, and my job was when the E7 board was published. You remember, I don't know if you remember, but there would be a certain amount of time between when the board was convened when they published it. My job with the EO program was to go in and look at who was selected, how many females were selected, how many minorities were selected. We would go through and look at that and we would bump the numbers. Then we would bring the board back in and say, how we're not saying that you have to change, but how is it possible you didn't pick one black person? You mean to tell me there was not one qualified black person out of the entire Army? And they would just kind of look at us and say, well, we'll go back and redo it. And we'd say, okay. So I don't know if you remember where it would be times when it
Yeah.
would take forever for the E7 board to come out. It was
Huh.
because we were making them go back and redo it. But we had to be able to bump those numbers. We had to know how many were qualified, how many were selected. And sometimes we would have to release a board member where we would talk to the president of the board and we'd say, we think Sergeant Major such and such needs to go back to 82nd because he doesn't see that there's any women that are qualified. And we would tell him, send him back to 82nd. Thanks for his service, but we don't need him.
Yeah.
That's how the EO system actually worked in the Army when it came to promotions. And I think getting that message across in the civilian world to employers that we are not here to make you hire a veteran. We just want to look at the data and we want you to explain to us how there is not one person qualified and you have 50 that applied. You have 50 that applied to work here and you didn't pick one. And that's something to look at. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to go over. I know we're over 2 minutes. Sorry. I just thought
That's fine.
that was something that I said, honestly, I never talk about this. Seriously, most people don't
Yeah.
even know I did this job. So I did that job. Most people in the military don't even know I did it, but it was
Huh.
something that they would call us and as brigade EO, they would call us and say, "Hey, we want you to come to Fort Benjamin Harris in Indiana, where the board convenes," and they would ask us, "Hey, first sergeant, I was starting first class at the time. We want you to review the board results and give us your ideas," and it would be about 7 of us. So yeah,
Hmm.
I share that with them.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that.
yeah,
Um,
thank you.
we are over time. The next meeting, I think I looked at it, October 3rd. Whoopsies. I'll send it by email. I'll try and pick a topic. I've covered the big ones. Hate crimes and employment are the big ones. If there's something that you have some interest in, let me know. September 23rd through 25th, are the Ledge Days here in Oregon. I'm going to be there. Eric, if you can make it, I'd love for you to be there as well. Um,
Yep.
I'm still waiting on some of the some of the committees. I've got my own personal legislators. I'm on their calendar, but I want to be at the state level, try and see what we can do about being an example for the rest of the nation. And then October 3rd, we'll meet after that. But I appreciate everybody being on. Thanks for giving me your time and attention. I'll get these two separated, and on YouTube, I'll send the link and follow up later.
Yep. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.